Okay, so we're beginning with lesson 18. What is function notation? All right, so here we have the do now, which says graph y equals x plus 1. All right, I want you to pause the video here so that you can complete the do now on your own. Continue if you feel like you're going to have trouble, or if you don't have a graphing calculator, I'll definitely walk you through how to figure this out on your own if you don't have a calculator. Okay, so when I look at y equals x plus 1, it looks like the standard form of a line, which is y equals mx plus b. All right, that's the standard form for the equation of a line. So I know I'm going to be drawing a line. All right, so the b tells us where we begin our graph, which is at positive 1 on the y-axis. All right, because the b term is our y-intercept. So I'm going to 0, 1 as my very first point on this graph. All right, the x by itself tells me that I have an imaginary 1 in front of that x, which means my slope, or the end value, is 1 over 1, because 1 divided by 1 is still 1. All right, but we like to write our slope as a fraction, because that means we're going to go up 1 and to the right 1. So from this point on the graph, I'm going to go up 1 box and over to the right 1, put a dot, up 1 over 1, put a dot, up 1 over 1. All right, and I'm going to do this until I get to the end of my graph. All right, now in order to do the other side, I'm not going to do up 1 over 1. If I'm working backwards, which is to the left of this point, I'm going to go down 1 to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1, down 1 to the left 1. Okay, so when you're working on the opposite side of your y-intercept, you want to do the opposite, which is down 1 over 1 of what you were doing before for your slope. All right, now I want you to remember, when drawing your line, please try to use a straight edge so that your graph is pretty neat. I already have an arrow at the end of this. I'm just going to add my own arrow at the other end. All right, because you need arrows for this. I'm just going to add one anyway. Okay, so there's my graph, y equals x plus 1. So now we're going to look to the right side of this graph where we have a question, which is here. And it says, is y equals x plus 1 a function? All right, so we talked a little about how to tell if something is a function. So I want you to take a minute, pause the video, and tell me if this is a function if you didn't answer this question already. Okay, so as I try to do the vertical line test on dotted vertical lines to see if I hit the graph once along the vertical line that I'm drawing. And I don't. I only hit the graph once each time I drew a vertical line. All right? So if that's the case, that means yes, this is a function. And I'm writing shorthand, yes, because it passes the vertical line test. Okay, this was for me. You can ignore that. All right. So moving on to the next part. So it says, since y equals x plus 1 is a function, we can write it as what? Or as blank. All right, so most of you know another way of writing y equals is to simply replace the y with f of x, which means a function of. It means that y can now be represented as a function, so we can write f of x equals x plus 1, all right, as our new equation. So now it says find f of 1 and what it's equal to. So that just means that instead of x, I'm going to change it, instead of x, I'm going to put 1 in its place because that's the input they gave me. Add it to the 1 that's already there, and 1 plus 1 gives me 2. So now it's saying on the graph, this is going to be 1, 2. And we're going to check that and see. So as we look at our graph here, if I go to x equals 1, which is here, and go up, I find myself at a point of 1, 2, which means what I did here is correct. All right, when I plugged in 1 for my input or for my x value and added it to the 1 that was a part of the equation, I got 2, which gave me my output or my y value. Okay, so you're going to do that for b and c as well. So instead of x, I'm going to plug in 2 and add it to 1. I get 3. So on the graph, this point should read 2, 3. And we're going to check the graph again to see if that's true. So if I go to x equals 2, I'm going to see 1, 2, 3. This point here is 2, 3, which means this is correct. Okay, so now same thing for 0. Plug in 0, add 1, I get 1. So on the graph, I should be looking for a point as 0, 1 to see if it's there and my math is correct. 0, 1, that's my y-intercept, and that is correct. Awesome. All right, so example 1, a little bit different, nothing crazy. If g of x is defined as g of x equals 2x plus 15, then find g of negative 3. So notice that these two things are similar, except instead of x, they replaced it with an input of negative 3. So that means I'm going to take this negative 3 and plug it in where I have an x. So my equation will look like this. G of negative 3 is equal to 2 times negative 3 plus 15. So g of negative 3 is equal to negative 6 plus 15. Remember, when you're adding two numbers with different signs, you're really just subtracting and you take the sign of the larger number. So the larger number is positive. So I'm going to end up with a positive 9 because 15 minus 6 is 9. Okay? So g of negative 3 equals 9. If I were to look for this on a graph, the point would be negative 3, positive 9. Okay? Awesome. So we're moving on. So you have a you try here. I want you to pause the video to answer these questions. Okay. So we have h of x equals x squared minus 2. Part A, they want you to plug in 4 for your input. So instead of x, I'm going to put 4 squared minus 2. All right, and then 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. Minus 2, I'm left with 14. So h of 4 equals 14. And then we have b, h of negative 1. So instead of x, for this question, I'm plugging in negative 1. So negative 1 squared minus 2. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a positive 1, which gives me 1 minus 2. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. So h of negative 1 equals negative 1. If I were to write either of these as a coordinate point, this one will be 4, 14, and this one will be negative 1. Okay? So, although this says practice question, the question 1, I wanted to go over it with you because question 4 is very similar, and then question 5 is just multiple choice. Notice here, which it is not in your packet, I only want you to complete practice questions 4 and 5 for the classwork portion for this lesson. All right? This lesson is Tuesday's lesson, so yes, you do have homework attached, which is on the following page after the practice questions. Okay, so we're on question 1, practice. So they gave you a graph and the following is a graph of function of f, right? So they want you to find for part A, f of -1. So here, there's no real math involved. You literally just have to go to where x is -1, which is here, and then tell me what the y value is at this point here. And the y value there is +1. So I'm just going to put a 1 right there. All right? And then when x is +1, oh, I'm sorry. When x is +1, which is this point here, you're going to tell me what the y value is. Now notice that I have a y value here and I have a y value here. All right? We talked about open and closed circles. If I have an open circle, that means that answer is not included in my solution. So I really don't care what the value of y is at the open circle because it's not a part of my answer or my solution. I only care about the y value at the closed circle, which is here. And that's going to be 1, 2, +3. So they try to trick you with that. Okay? So now we're at f of 3. So where x is 3, what is my y value? So x is 3 right here. So I'm going to travel up and I'm looking for the point here. At this point, it crosses that graph, which means y is equal to 2 when x is 3. Okay? So it says find the value of x for part D for f of x equals 3. So remember, all the values on this side of the equal sign are my y values or my output. All right? All the values within the parentheses next to the f are my x values or my input. Okay? So with that being said, they gave you the y value. They want you to find the x value. All right? So at y is 3, so I'm going to do a different color so you can see this. So I'm going up. Oh, what is that? Okay. So now, change the color. So at y is 3, 1, 2, 3, which is at this line. What is the x value at y is 3? So let's erase that so we can really look at our graph. Right? So looking at this dotted line, I want to know, are there any points of the graph that I hit that are on this dotted line? Clear points that we can see. All right, and I see one of them. I'm going to erase a little bit. I see that there's a point on that line, on that purple dotted line, which is right here. All right, so what is the value of x at that point? And we actually have the answer here. Where y is 3, what was our x value? It was 1. But if you wanted to look at the graph, this will also tell you that it was 1 because this line, this arrow that I just drew is on the x equals 1. So you would put here x equals 1. Okay? So this is very similar to question 4. Question 4, they give you a graph. It doesn't exactly look like this. Actually, question 4 is a little bit easier than this because the graph isn't broken up like this. They give you the input, which is the number inside of the parentheses, and they want you to tell you, if you look at the graph, what is the value of y at this value of x? All right? I want you to answer questions A through D for question 4, and then I want you to answer question 5, which is multiple choice. All right? Similar to what we've been doing. Now, I have a homework help page right now because I realized that the questions we did in class or in this video are not exactly similar to the ones that are on the homework. All right? So the first 3 questions on the homework are pretty similar to what we've been doing, right? And remember that you have 3 different equations on the homework page. So be careful if they're saying h of 5, f of -3, g of -6. That means you're plugging that number into the equation that goes with that letter. So there's an equation for f, there's an equation for g, there's an equation for h. Remember, you have tools at home, those of you that have computers and internet access, to use Google or YouTube to kind of help you along with this, but I'm also going to help you as well. Okay? So for the third question on the left for your homework, it reads h of r minus 3. So that I'm going to go down to the h equation at the top of the page. It's the third equation. So h equation reads h of x equals 4x minus 5. All right, so this is my input right here. The r minus 3 is my input. So that means wherever I see x, instead of x, I'm going to put r minus 3 in parentheses. So for this equation, it's going to read 4 times r minus 3 minus 5. Then I'm going to distribute the 4, gives me 4r, distribute again, gives me minus 12 minus 5. Then I'm going to combine like terms here. So now negative 12 minus 5 gives me a negative 17. So my final answer would be h of r minus 3 equals 4r minus 17. All right, so for the ones that have variables, you're literally plugging in whatever variable they give you for x. Now, if you find that to be a little bit too difficult and you only answer the questions that have numbers attached, obviously you won't be penalized because I'm not in front of you to give you that reassurance that you're doing it right. Also, I'm going to add this on Google Classroom, but if you're listening, which you should be, there has been a new requirement for classwork where things need to be uploaded to make sure that you're actually completing the class review. So the practice questions that I gave you from lesson 17A and 17B and all the lessons for this week, they will be due on the following Monday. And that date is, I'll tell you right now, that date is March 30th, right? So technically classes don't start until the 23rd. So you have from the 23rd, because all of your videos will be up by the 23rd. You have from the 23rd until March 30th to send in pictures of the pages that I give you as practice questions for classwork. I'm not talking about homework right now, because I kind of already told you guys how to upload homework. You take a picture of it, you upload it to the assignment in Google Classroom, and it's submitted. All right, but now you have to do the same thing for your classwork. So wherever I say, this is a you try and you're doing it on your own, pause the video here, you need to take a picture of that and submit it as your classwork. Okay, I'm just gonna have a general tab that says lesson 17A and B, classwork submissions, lesson 18, classwork submissions, lesson 19, classwork, blah, 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 so on and so forth. If you guys are having troubles uploading pictures to Google Classroom, please text me on the Remind app. I sent all the information for the Remind app to your scheduler, so make sure you check those. Okay, so this is the end of lesson 18. I hope you guys are doing well. Please don't hesitate to write me. I will do the office hours, even though some people said they won't need it. I think I'm going to do it anyway. So I'll let you know how we are going to go about that once I set it up. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day. Stay safe.